Have you ever been surrounded by noise, laughter, familiar faces? Yeah, felt as if your soul was sinking into a deep and heavy silence. As if an invisible distance separates you from the world, where despite being among people, something inside you whispers, no one truly sees me. No one really understands me. No one is actually with me. This is not physical loneliness, it's emotional and existential loneliness. One of the most painful paradoxes of the human experience. In the very heart of connection, a human being, wired for bonding, can still feel profoundly alone. This kind of loneliness is not just a passing emotion. It reflects a deeper and often unfulfilled search for meaning and genuine connection. A search that in the modern world frequently researches a dead end. Today we'll explore this experience from a more philosophical and psychological perspective. Why in an age of constant connection do souls feel so distant from one another? What are the psychological, social, and existential roots of emotional loneliness? How does it affect our mind and body? And most importantly, how can we transform loneliness from a source of suffering into an opportunity for authenticity and real connection? What emotional loneliness really is? Emotional loneliness emerges when physical presence is abundant, but emotional and existential depth is missing. As social beings, our brain don't simply need people around us. They need meaningful bonds, connection, where our inner world is seen, understood, and accepted. From a philosophical standpoint, loneliness may be part of the human condition itself. Our inner experiences can never be fully transferred to another person. To some degree, we are always alone. But modern life has intensified this natural solitude and turned it into an existential crisis. We are more connected than ever, yet often feel more isolated than previous generation. But why emotional loneliness happens? The first reason is lack of depth and the absence of genuine empathy. Many interactions today remain on the surface. Short message, pilot laughter, routine conversation about work and daily logistics. But the human soul longs for depth, for space where fear, dreams, doubts, and pain can be showed and shared openly. When this depth is missing, we may feel invisible, even in crowded rooms, as if our presence doesn't truly matter. Number two is the superficiality of relationship in a modern life. Modernity has reshaped how we relate to one another. Speed, economic pressure, extreme individualism, and consumer culture have pushed relationships toward efficiency rather than intimacy. Conversation often revolve around productivity, appearance, or social status, leaving little room for existential questions like meaning, vulnerability, or inner struggle. This creates a paradox: high connectivity, low connection. The number three is existential misalignment. Sometimes loneliness arises because we are simply not resonating on the same frequency as those around us. Values differ. Life stages diverge. The search for meaning moves in different directions. This misalignment can lead us to wonder whether loneliness stems from being misunderstood or from living in a world unable to hear the language of our soul. Number four is hiding the true self and fear of vulnerability. To feel safe, many of us wear masks. We hide our fears, doubts, and emotional needs, Over time, this self-protection turned into an inner prison. We feel alone not because the others have abandoned us, but because we have withdrawn our authentic selves from the world. Number 5 is internal struggle like anxiety or depression. When the mind is clouded by anxiety or depression, the world feels distant and cold. These internal states distort perception and make connections feel exhausting or unreachable. In this moment, loneliness doesn't come from the outside, it emerges from the within. The number 6 is existential transition and life changes. Life transition like migration, career shifts, loss, or personal transformation often weaken old bonds. These moments expose the appearances of relationships and environment reflection. Loneliness here may not be a failure, but a signal that something new is being formed. The impact of emotional loneliness. Intensified anxiety, depression, and existential questioning. Reduced self-worth and sense of meaninglessness. Physical effects like insomnia or fatigue. Strained relationships and emotional distance. Loss of persons, living in the past or in the future, but not in the moment. Long-term risk for both mental and physical health. Loneliness is not neutral. When ignored, it slowly reshapes how we see ourselves and the world, turning loneliness into an opportunity for growth. Let's move to the practical and philosophical part, that how to work with loneliness rather than fight it. The first is self-knowledge as a foundation of connection. At the core of emotional loneliness lies a fragile relationship with the self. When a person does not clearly know who they are, what they value, or what they truly need, connection becomes shallow by default, not because others are incapable of depth, but because there is nothing stable to connect from. Philosophers have long argued that authenticity preceded intimacy. Without the ground sense of self, relationships turn into performances rather than encounters. Loneliness, in this sense, is not merely the absence of other. It's the absence of inner clarity. And where clarity is missing, connection becomes confusing, inconsistent, and unsatisfying. The number 2 is vulnerability as the price of real belonging. Many people feel lonely, not because they are unseen, but because they are unseen as they truly are. Emotional loneliness often grows in the space between the inner world and a social mask. We trade honestly for safety, and we wonder why connection feels hollow. From an existential perspective, vulnerability represents a choice between control and authenticity. To be seen requires the risk of being hurt. Yet, without the risk, relationships remain emotionally sterile. Loneliness persists not due to rejection, but due to self-withdrawal. The next one is depth over quantity in human bonds. Modern life encourages expansion. More contacts, more interactions, more visibility. But the human nervous system was never designed for endless shallow connections. It was designed for a small number of emotionally reliable bonds. Loneliness intensified when relationships lack depth, even if they are numerous. Philosophically, meaningful connection is not found in proximity, but in presence. A single relationship rooted in honesty and shared meaning can reduce loneliness more effectively than dozens of superficial ones. Number 4 is self-compassion as an antidote to inner isolation. Emotional loneliness is often accompanied by harsh self-judgment. Something is wrong with me. This inner hostility deepens isolation, turning loneliness into a self-reinforcing loop. From a philosophical lens, self-compassion is not indulgence. It's realism. To acknowledge one's loneliness without self-contempt is to remain human without self-abandonment. When inner hostility softness, the need for constant external validation weakens, and allowing connection to emerge more naturally. Number 5 is resonance instead of belonging everywhere. Not all loneliness is pathological. Sometimes it's a signal of misalignment. When values, questions, and inner concerns differ from those of our environment, loneliness becomes a form of existential feedback. Rather than forcing belonging where resonance is absent, loneliness can guide us towards space, intellectual, emotional, or spiritual, where dialogues feels alive. Aristotle described this as a friendship based on virtue, connection rooted not in conversation, but in shared orientation toward meaning. The next is loneliness as a teacher, not as enemy. Loneliness as information rather than threat. When loneliness is resisted, it intensifies. When it is observed, it reveals. Eastern philosophies suggest that suffering depends when we fight our internal states. Emotional loneliness, when approached with awareness, often point toward unmet needs or neglected values. In this way, loneliness becomes less of a punishment and more of a guide. Emotional loneliness is not merely a lack, it's a message, a call back to authenticity, depth, and meaningful presence. It reminds us that being surrounded is not the same as being connected, and that real connections begins long before it reaches another person. You are not broken for feeling lonely. You're human, and humans are always researching for resonance. If this video resonated with you, join me on this journey. Take care.